Today, I'm presenting an interview with Jack Levin, 21st Google employee, OG Bitcoin miner, founder of X1 blockchain, which is a fork of Solana virtual machine. Very interesting case right here because there are very few blockchains that actually are forking Solana. The blockchain is recognized by the main developer of Solana, Tolly, multiple times through his interviews as well. And at the end of the interview, we're actually talking about the application of meme season on-chain and the usage of meme season on-chain as a marketing tool. Very few chain founders at this stage are actually understanding what is happening with meme coin space and are seeing the utility for these things for their businesses. And we obviously have the main two most successful cases on the market with Solana and Base, finding main product market fit this cycle through the enablement of meme season on chain. And I won't even say that this season for them was enabled through the teams of the chain. It were just enabled through people that were interested to make money, and they essentially allowed for something like this to happen. We also talk about tech part of Solana, Ethereum, their benefits and their issues. We talk about Bitcoin. So from the tech understanding, I do believe that this piece of content would definitely be a great one to dive a bit deeper into the space, understand what is happening behind the closed doors and how the industry works and how things actually look like from the tech point of view. Jack, for example, is saying that Solana has the best tech code-wise out there in comparison to all of the competition, Sonic, for example, that is present right now on the marketplace. I wish you a pleasant viewing and listening experience. Today we're talking to Jack, the founder of X1 blockchain. Jack, it's very nice to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience, your background and your project as well?
Hi, Stan. Very good to join your show. I guess by the way of introduction, I am an early crypto person, OG or whatever you call them nowadays. I started mining Bitcoin in 2011. Got into Ethereum when Ethereum launched at around 2015, 16. Saw the CryptoKitties almost destroy Ethereum. I think I still have a CryptoKitty actually, but that was that was a pivotal moment for me where I saw that Ethereum probably is not going to scale. It's just not going to work. And kind of like fast forward to, I guess, the COVID years, basically. So Solana launched and I started looking at some NFT projects there just to see what's like all the hype with NFTs on Solana. And I was just like shocked how much better the UX is. Like the transaction was almost instant. And I was an early Phantom wallet user. So, I mean, like that NFT I bought went to zero, but the experience kind of like indicated to me that Solana is like this new generation thing. And so like before my crypto journey, I was one of the early engineers at Google. I started Google in 1999, met the founders of Google at Stanford, and they just invited me to work on infrastructure when Google was like maybe only 20 employees. So I joined as an employee number 21 and was in charge of the design for better, faster access to Google that spawned different countries. We did like a bunch of things with my team, like a Gmail launch, Google Maps launch, connecting to partners like AOL and Yahoo. So my team actually launched all of those partnerships. And when I say launched, it's not like not in the business sense, but in the technological backend design, so that launches could actually be smooth. Because Google used to be a very, very small thing, and so Yahoo was like the first, and AOL too was one of the first two giant partners that had millions of users that all of a sudden just start flowing into Google. And so my job was just to make sure that those launches go smooth and design infrastructure behind the search engine to accommodate that. And then like after I quit Google in 2005, I started a company imagehack.com, which was an image hosting company. Then I got connected to Twitter founders, which I also knew from Google because there was a company called blogger.com. Actually, I think it was also known as Blogspot. So Evan Williams and various other guys, along with Jack Dorsey, they started Twitter, and Twitter did not have image backend technology, nothing for images and nothing for video, so just like an API for text message sharing. And so my company was providing Twitter with image backend and video backend for about 3 years. It was called yfrog.com. So if you like go to Wikipedia and look at the yfrog with the letter Y stands for yellow frog, you can see that the stuff we did for Twitter. And so like that was my thing after Google. And then like obviously in 2011, I joined bitcointalk.org, started hanging out with the cypherpunks and looked at the Bitcoin design and started mining Bitcoin. And I think I was making like three to five Bitcoin daily until ASICs came along. So I ran the mining operation for about like 2 or 3 years. And so today I am involved with Solana quite deeply. I work on their validator code. I test bugs. I look at things, how to improve the nodes to run faster. And I also look at the economic designs of obviously Solana and plus various other chains. And I think you mentioned off the record that you saw this article that one of our co-founders, Axel, wrote. It's 130 pages. It's a deep dive into the economic landscape and technological landscape of pretty much all of the leading blockchains and how our project X1 works to try to get things done differently in a way that follows the first principles of blockchain. So, or first principles of crypto, which is high decentralization, open source, strong self-custody guarantees, and things like that. And so we obviously can dive deeper into that. But yeah, I'm a technologist at heart, and I also do a lot of like game theory work in a way of how to create value out of the technology through the merge of decentralization and the user onboarding.
Interesting. And I know that you're pretty much forking the Solana VM, and very few projects actually doing something like this. Most of them, they're just trying to do Ethereum layer 2s. I was curious why you focused on Solana in the first place, and how X1 is essentially different from all the other chains that we have on the marketplace currently.
So I think Solana is probably the best designed blockchain that I have seen, and I have looked at a lot of code. I worked with a really fast EVM blockchain before called Phantom, and their code was pretty good in some places, but pretty terrible in some others. It almost felt like it was a patchwork of different devs that were disconnected from each other, trying to design a system. Nevertheless, like Phantom was really, really fast. I think we were able to get to 10,000 TPS on their EVM. The EVM actually was that Phantom used was just a fork from Ethereum, but their consensus was really novel and unique. It used DAG, so directed acyclic graph, which is very, very different than the like Ethereum, for example, uses. And so after studying Phantom, we just like thought, what about Solana? Like, they claim 100,000 TPS. Is it really true? And so we took their like open source code into the lab and started doing various tests. And it became clear that the code quality, as well as the unique design of parallelism within the VM, is going to be a winner in the current market race for the like supreme domination when it comes to the fastest, more scalable tech. The code quality was also really good. You could actually see that it was a lot of smart people. Not only that people that worked and were smart, but they also had pretty good coordination in terms of how to put everything together. So everything kind of like really works. And so that's like, it gave us basically thinking that, okay, well, if this is the best platform, we should really consider to introduce our changes that we feel that could push it even further. So like take what I learned from Google, how to run large distributed systems, because Google is really this large distributed database that has indexing of the web and crawling of the web as input, and output is the users hitting the database, which is not dissimilar to blockchain. And so I thought that just bringing some Google know-how into blockchain tech and using Solana's SVM as a platform to scale, we could not only have a faster platform, but also we can work on various game theory aspects in terms of how to make the whole offering even more decentralized than what the current blockchains have. And we can like dive deep on decentralization. It's the topic that I'm most passionate about. And we've done a lot of research in like today's chains, like what they do, what they could do better, so on and so forth.
Yeah, because we definitely have a lot of chains currently, and not a lot of the ones that actually try to fork SVM, which is very, very interesting. And I know that you were recognized multiple times by the main developer of Solana, Tolly. I was curious, what are the main benefits, I would say, differentiators that X1 has technologically in comparison to Solana and essentially other chains that are available on the market?
Yeah, so let's make this interesting. So rather than me saying here's like a top 10 things that we're improving on, let's first address what Solana's problems that they're facing today. So like for example, what do you think Solana's top 3 issues that you know of from just like research and being exposed to their ecosystem?
I know that in the market it's like quite popular to say that it's centralized, although after reading your article, I do think differently at this stage. In terms of other things, the only thing that come to my mind is just the amount of people with fraudulent actions that are present on the chain, but it's obviously not up to the chain. In terms of other issues, it's quite hard for me to respond, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned you read the article and you have a different perception of centralization or decentralization. Can you comment on what made you change your mind or alter your thinking?
Yeah, it was about this index that essentially said that the amount of validators to actually take control over Solana is actually more than the same thing in case of Ethereum, essentially.
Right. So let's jump into this topic. There's really, I would say, 3 areas in terms of technology that's popular in crypto. And when I say popular, it's not just technology, but also like the brand. So the number 1 brand in crypto is Bitcoin. Okay. Why is it popular? Well, it was the first one. It is the most accepted by the world as crypto in a way of like what crypto is. There's numerous ETFs that are supported by very large institutions like BlackRock, Fidelity, iShares, and so on and so forth. So people have access and they get exposure of Bitcoin marketing. And CNBC and CNN, and they talk about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is definitely like this large thing. Is it decentralized? You could argue, yes, it is decentralized. However, there's a big caveat. First of all, you cannot join Bitcoin as a miner without taking out $10 million loan. And you could probably do that. So you take $10 million loan, then you have to find a data center that's relatively well priced in terms of power, like somewhere like in Iceland or maybe in Canada or God knows elsewhere. It used to be Kazakhstan, actually. You know, Kazakhstan and former Soviet Union was like a big Bitcoin mining hub, and unless that they banned it. But the point is, like, you have to jump through so many things to become a node. You can run full node that's just receives the Bitcoin ledger, but you can't really secure it with that node because you're not a miner. So only miners can secure, and the barrier to entry for miners is very, very high. You have to be an institution to make the network decentralized. So to me, that actually is a relatively poor design because a regular person who could be joining the network as a decentralized node is now been priced out and will always be at the mercy of the big guys, no matter what they decide to do. And that's a problem. Okay. So that's Bitcoin. But it is still like the most well-known crypto. It works great as basically a value storage layer for your money. Like people argue that as the dollar gets cheaper and cheaper, Bitcoin is great to have. I have a lot of Bitcoin and I'm going to keep it for pretty much forever. So the next thing is programmable money. So programmable money was the term pioneered by Ethereum guys. And so Vitalik, after working for Bitcoin, decided that Bitcoin really needs to scale. and he came up with Ethereum. And Bitcoin guy said like, yeah, we're not gonna ever improve Bitcoin like what you think. So he decided just go ahead and like do his own thing in 2014, 15, when Ethereum came into kind of like prominence. And so Ethereum was the first kind of like offer to the market as programmable money. People say Ethereum or ETH is money. It's a very popular concept. They also call it ultrasound money. I don't actually agree with either. I don't think ETH is money. I don't think it's ultrasound money. I think ETH is a utility token that's used for you to run transactions, which like, for example, with Bitcoin, like believe it or not, you spend a lot less per transaction than you would on Ethereum when Ethereum is like heavily used. And so when it comes to decentralization, Ethereum used to be better when they were proof of work, but then they decided to move to proof of stake, which is in itself, in isolation, is not a bad thing because technically it should have lowered the barrier for people to stake into Ethereum and become and make Ethereum like more decentralized because stake is a bond. It's like a social agreement that if you stake and then you do something bad, you will like end up getting slashed and your ETH will be taken out. The problem there is that Ethereum obviously had a big bull run. It hit like $5,000 per ETH, and the staking requirement was 32 ETH. And 32 ETH at $5,000 is easily over $100,000 to as a barrier for anyone to join. So again, we now have a problem. It's not as big as a Bitcoin issue, where you have to have millions and millions of dollars to participate. With Ethereum now, there is a problem with, like, as Ethereum gets more expensive, the barrier for new people that join the network to decentralize it further goes higher, higher, and higher. Now, Ethereum guys will argue this is not a problem because there's a solution like Lido, and Lido takes your ETH and then it's kind of like a staking pool, and they run validators on your behalf by proxy. I would say actually it's a big problem because Lido got so big. So like this paradigm of self-staking has been destroyed. So now everybody's like giving money to Lido to make some yield, and Lido is getting stronger, which can potentially mess the network up because they have bigger and bigger and bigger influence on the network. So this is a centralization force that's pushing people or pushing the design to be further and further centralized by trying to lower the barrier for people to join and earn yield, but at the expense of decentralization. So that's kind of like a big problem. The second big problem is that Ethereum introduced this concept called PBS, or Proposer Block Separation, PBS protocol. And if you ever done research on who is making all the blocks for Ethereum, it's really only two entities, Titan Build and Beaver. So what those guys do, they receive proposals from validators for the block construction. They run MEV, where they try to arrange the transactions so that they can extract some value there. And then they pass on that MEV back to the block proposer, which is like a normal validator that have staked like 32 ETH. And what happened is that it was supposed to be a marketplace that's fair for the block builders. And there should be many of them. But in reality, what happened is like 95% of blocks are made by two entities, two groups. And one of them until recently was censoring Tornado Cash. So what do we see now? So we see now that this design, the PBS, is centralizing Ethereum to a point that should you upset guys at Beaver or Titan, they can blacklist your address and you will never be able to push a transaction through. Or if it happens to be a protocol like Tornado Cash, they will certainly, there's like a toggle to turn off it on the contract level. So what's happening is that they thought that there would be healthy competition among the block builders, and there should be many to choose from. But all of the validators that want to make the highest yield, they're just choosing those two because those guys monopolizing block space creation and passing on the biggest yield to block proposers. So again, like the short-term income situation, forcing you to basically vote for centralized system, which is like those two guys. So is Ethereum centralized? Well, actually, it's not. It's no longer centralized as it was because there's two entities that can censor you. And of course, like the Ethereum guys will come and say that It's not a problem because the social layer will actually choose like some other block builder as soon as those guys screw up. But this is not, this is a band-aid because I don't want to be waiting for my whatever contract or my transactions to be censored just because they find it unpalatable. This is like not what crypto was designed to be. It's designed to be not to have a middleman specifically. And those two entities are literally middleman between my transaction and my assets and the rest of like what I could be doing on Ethereum. Okay.
Makes sense.
And you can look up all this data. This data is public. Go to Etherscan, look at the block building page, and you will see that there is a chart that literally showing that in the last 2 years, Ethereum's Nakamoto coefficient has dropped from like relatively high numbers, like maybe above 30 or maybe it was more, but now it's basically 2. So what is Nakamoto coefficient? Nakamoto coefficient is basically a number. It indicates how many entities it takes to disrupt, censor, or affect the chain. It doesn't matter whether it's negative or positive, whatever the effect is. If there's a lower number of entities, then the chain actually becomes more centralized, and it has more of a chance to be a middleman between you and your digital assets. And so this is the world of Ethereum today. The other thing that Ethereum is really suffering from, they're suffering from their inability to scale the network and to become as fast as Solana, because their technology is running on a single thread. So the single thread execution environment, which is the EVM, basically not taking any advantage of hardware. So hardware has been advancing. It's been getting cheaper. It's cheaper to get a cloud server to run a node. But Ethereum is not taking advantage of that. Instead, most of the protocol design by Vitalik, and you probably saw that giant little sheet with like infographics, merge, splurge, and a bunch of other things that he called it. None of it actually scales Ethereum. It actually only scales the ability for L2s to connect to Ethereum and to spend less money to send the roll-up to Ethereum. The problem is here that the chain's revenue is based on the transactions or the users that pay for transactions. That's the chain's revenue, because you can take that transaction, you can burn it. And if you burn that, which Ethereum does, so it burns their base fees, and they don't burn tips, but base fees are burnt. The burn of the base fee actually reduces emissions of Ethereum, so it's actually bullish for the coin. So the more transactions come to the Ethereum, the more stuff gets burned, and the more scarce the supply becomes available to people. So it actually makes sense now to acquire it, and the value is growing. So what happened with L2s, and we see it over like especially like the last year, L2s took over the execution part, running on centralized platforms. So for example, Base from Coinbase is just running a handful of nodes, which is basically optimism stack. There's no decentralization there at all. And Ethereum is telling users, go to L2s, things are great there. And all of the Ethereum maxis are saying L2s is like, come to save Ethereum being slow, and this is the way. And I would say it's very hypocritical when Vitalik says, hey, we're not going to compromise on decentralization, and yet they promote L2s, which are completely centralized. And also they call it the scaling roadmap, which it isn't. All you're doing is you're taking your transactions, or where you had users that ran transactions on the main chain, and you now pushed it to the satellites that are sucking the living life out of the blockchain. And they can censor your transactions anytime they want, because usually sequencers run under full control of all of those so-called blockchains, which are not even blockchains. It's just a ledger that looks to the users like they run an EVM, so your wallets are compatible, but in reality, it's just a ledger that they themselves control. And of course, they have DAOs and stuff like that. But whatever, the point is that if somebody like takes over their sequencer, there's no decentralization of any kind, and they can censor or just block your transaction, or just like take your money anytime they want. And so those are like the major issues with Ethereum world today. So there's like this centralization force through Ethereum not wanting to scale. And there's an issue with the block building, where the proposer builder separation actually created a marketplace that that is unhealthy for Ethereum decentralization efforts. Now, this brings us to Solana. So Solana's running 1,500 nodes, and they're running delegated proof of stake, which is great because unlike Ethereum, you can delegate one sol and you could start earning yield. And you can choose any validator on Solana to delegate to. Some of them take commission, some of them don't. Like, for example, Helios does not take commission. They take zero commission. And so they're now one of the top validator groups on Solana that propose, handle, and produce blocks. And they also act as an RPC layer. So they're doing a great job. The other group there is called Triton. They're kind of like in the same, providing the same type of tech, RPC and block building, so on and so forth. And people can also delegate maybe the minimum amount would be like one sol, and it's just gonna like earn you yield. So in Solana's, the ability to earn yield is technically not tied to centralizing entities like Lido on Ethereum, which is awesome. And the other thing is that you can actually deposit your sol into a validator or delegate to a validator just using your wallet. So you go to the wallet, you click on sol, and then you have like an option stake and choose any node you like. And there's like various metrics that you can choose by. Click it, click submit, or click whatever send, and you're done. So great UX. So Solana guys, Phantom team, and the whole design is pretty spectacular in terms of like how easy to onboard stakers for your network. And obviously stakers, they make the network more secure because it's like a bond, it's like a social contract, but yet it's like actually backed by the money that's actively liquid. And so like why would validators want delegated stake? Well, validators want delegated stake on Solana because the more stake you have, the more often you're chosen as a leader to produce blocks. And when you produce blocks, you actually make block rewards. And those block rewards are in form of fees. So when people, like all of those news that came out in the last month that Solana is making more fees than Ethereum and all of the L2s combined, the majority of those fees go to those validator nodes. So it's awesome to be a validator on Solana because you can tap into the chain's activity and make all that yield for yourself, and it pays for your node to be online. Now, the problem with the design of Solana, well, like let's go through the list of problems. So far we've been throwing flowers at them, but like here comes the issue. The issue now that delegated proof of stake blockchains, the protocol by itself is not sufficient enough to fight centralization forces. And let me explain how. Let's say that Triton and Helios and like there may be like a Coinbase node, there's a Ledger node, Galaxy node, Binance node. All of those are large institutions at this point. They have millions of dollars worth of SOL staked into them. And they can now afford to improve their technology further and to share more yield with the stakers, potentially. Because if they're so popular, they get even more stake, they make even more money, and they can also take that money that they make and they can self-stake. So it's a flywheel effect that's centralizing in nature, because the more popular you are, the more access you have to produce blocks that makes you more fees that you can then wash and repeat the process and self-stake or continue to stake back into yourself. Or you can spend that money on marketing to attract more people from Solana ecosystem to stake on your node. I mean, like, it sounds pretty good from like the 5 mile like perspective, but in reality, what happens is the monopoly of certain nodes that are becoming so prominent actually acting as a centralizing force on Solana again. Simply because their popularity and their ability to generate yield attracts quote unquote votes, and people vote with delegation to give them even more power. And so on Solana, if we go to the like Solana validators table, you will actually see that top 100 validators control 75% of the chain. And there is 1,500 nodes running today. So the percentage of 100 versus 1500 is really, really tiny, right? So the official Nakamoto coefficient for Solana is only 19. That means 19 groups, should they decide to collude, they can censor the chain, censor transactions, blacklist addresses. I mean, of course, they're probably not going to do it ever, but we are not in the blockchain technology, or we're not in crypto to give people a toggle to become a man in the middle, right? So no matter how you say it, no matter how much you promise, the technology that crypto has brought to the world was supposed to reduce dependency on actors that you can enumerate in low teens or high teens, whatever. And like 19 is the last number in teens, but whatever. It's still a very low number compared to the amount of dollars or Solana actually passes through all of those nodes. There's like two things you can say about it. You can call it the tragedy of commons, where the desire to acquire short-term gains actually damages the network. You can also call it the Moloch effect, Moloch. So like look up Moloch. So Moloch basically is like this demon from like mythology that basically says that if given a chance to make money, you will actually make money for yourself first. You're not going to care about the group, and the group in this case being blockchain. So you're not going to say that I'm so noble that I will put my profits on the line towards the cause of decentralization. That like does not happen. So we looked at basically all of the chains out there, and we said that the issue is really not necessarily the people, because the assumption is that people will do what's good for them and be selfish by design. But crypto technology exists to actually to put fairness back and level the playing for pretty much everyone who is in crypto, right? And so what we thought that perhaps the issue again is not the people's behavior, but rather the tech and the game theory behind the whole setup. And so in our article, we actually outline how we approach it, and also it's part of the X1's white paper. So this like brings us to why should X1 exist? And so X1 is a fork of Solana, which I already said we believe it's like the best tech out there in the world today. I mean, like Sui is like this new thing that's coming up, and perhaps they will challenge Solana at some point, someday. But in terms of the system being battle tested, Solana has no equal, because billions and billions of transactions have went through an SVM and were successfully executed. People would argue that Solana drops transactions and Solana actually like reverse transactions. That is certainly true, but it's not for the reasons that people think. It's not because the design is bad, and we can get into that later if you're interested. And so in terms of X1 and how we plan to do things differently, first of all, like the other thing, like when I asked you, hey, what do you think the problem with Solana is? Like, and certainly you said centralization. The other problem is the barrier for the validator to get into a network and to provide value. Right now, the regular person cannot do it because the protocol of the blockchain will charge you at least one sol per day to run a validator. They call it voting fees. And voting fees used to be non-issue when Solana was like worth 50 cents or $1. Like certainly you would pay $1 to be on the network when like Sol was cheap. Now Sol is like $165 last time I checked, but it's been bouncing between 150 and 250. So what happens now is that should I want to run a validator, I have to pay $100,000 in Sol every year. So my node could be somewhat expensive, like $1,000 a month. So it's $12,000 a month to run the nodes. Plus I have to pay another 100,000 as like club membership, if you will. And I asked Solana guys, like, what's the deal with the voting fees? Like, why is it like so much? And the answer basically was that this is to prevent spam, which is, I guess, is an answer, but like Ethereum does not really suffer from that. They don't charge validators to be on the network, but Solana does. And that's a problem. And so in X1, we basically turned it off. We said that there's no need to pay any money to connect to the network and to provide value, because the work that you do to run a validator actually is the work that should be enumerated in as a valuable like points that you get. Like, so you join the network, you participate in consensus, and then sometimes you're chosen to be a leader to produce blocks. And so we turned the voting fees off completely. And the next thing we did, we looked at the Solana's fee structure. And I can definitively say that Solana fees are really strange how they work, actually. And let me explain why I feel that they're strange. When Solana's network is not busy, you're not required to pay any fees, pretty much at all. But let me put an asterisk on that. The asterisk would be is that you pay 5,000 lamp ports per signature, which is basically 5,000 lamp ports. And I think there's 1 million lamp ports in Sol, but I could be wrong. I think it could be 1 billion. I forget. Point is, it's a very, very, very small amount, which is basically nonsensical in a way that you're not spending any money to use the chain when the chain is not busy. Certainly, if you look at the numbers, it's 0.0001 cent per transaction. When the chain gets busy and there's competition among people trying to send the transaction to be included in the block, they have a choice, which is an option to pay a fee that they call priority fee. This priority fee, again, is optional. And if you pay it, and you're above other people that are putting their transactions with priority fees, then the Solana's leader, a validator that's in the leader mode, will prioritize your transaction because you pay more. So this is what we call a fee auction system. And it works pretty well, but it is, again, optional. So when the chain is completely free of load, you don't pay anything for the chain. And the problem with that is that the validators still have to pay for the voting fees, and they have to pay for the operation of their nodes that are online, but they don't get any fees, right? So that's an issue. It's too much of an extreme. And on the other hand, the priority fees are there, but again, they're optional, and often they don't price the cost of use of chain appropriately, because it's just entirely based on an auction of people's demand. It's not based on any sort of other metrics at all, like how fast is your node running, or how many transactions there are in a block on average. There's no enumeration like that. So in Ethereum, we have gas. There's a rate of gas you pay, which is called GUI, or cost in GUI. So at 1 GUI, Ethereum is cheap. At 100 GUI, Ethereum is expensive. And there's a statistical analyzer that looks at all the blocks and basically manages the cost of a block for people as they come to make the chain not keel over with too much traffic. In Solana's case, what happens is there's no cost of the use of the block at all, but there is a cost should you getting into a hot token or a hot mint and you want to be prioritized. You will pay that priority fee to the validator to include you. But again, it does not actually test how busy the chain is. And so Solana have had many problems in the past where even a single token like Melania launched and the chain stopped working properly. And when I say the chain stopped working properly, what happened really is that the dApps, which are mostly DEXs, so Radium, Jupiter, Meteora, they were not feeding people right fee information so that people could choose the priority fees intelligently. So most of the transactions that were hitting Solana were underpriced in fees. And because there was no feedback mechanism, people would just end up getting stuck. So the transactions would hang for about a minute. And what do you do if you want to get into Melania quick? Well, you send another transaction, another transaction, another transaction from all of the wallets you have. And so as a single user, you're now spamming the chain and you still cannot get into the block because the dApps do not provide, there's no fee mechanism that tells you how busy the chain is so that the wallet can react appropriately. MetaMask is a pretty crappy wallet, but at least it can give you an idea what you should be paying for a transaction. Again, back to X1, how we're solving this problem. So first of all, besides just turning off the voting cost so that the validators can join easier and not pay an arm and a leg to participate, we're also borrowing the concept from Ethereum where basically you could call it London fork, you can call it EIP 1559, which is basically a way to say that if your blocks are busy, you have to pay more for the blocks. And unlike priority fees, the base fees are required. You have to pay them. You cannot just ignore them. And if you're requesting too many compute units, which is basically similar to gas on Ethereum for Solana, you have to pay your fair share of the use of a block. And it acts as a spam filter, actually, because a bunch of spammers on Solana that are trying to run arbitrage transactions, they're taking advantage of the fact that it doesn't matter how many transactions they send, all fees are optional. All they need to do is spam the chain as hard as they can to try to get in. So they are trying to hack their way and circumvent this fee auction mechanism to plug in their transaction, and they don't care that most of their transactions will fail. What does it mean for the game theory and the use of a chain? Well, it actually means that if you're not a bot, your opportunity to make money and to send transactions that actually get executed has been lowered, because you don't have access to this technology. You're not continuously sending transactions. And every transaction that fails actually takes resources from the chain. So like Dan from Blockworks, he shows the charts, and anybody can go to blockworks.com to look at the Solana's metrics, and you can actually see that 80% of the reverted transactions, meaning transactions that failed, come from like 10% of the addresses, which are bots. So you can then basically say that 80% of Solana's capacity is given to the bots that are not even it's only 10% of the users on the chain. And when I say users, I say it loosely. It might actually be 1%, because you cannot actually tell the difference between a bot and a human. One human can run 10 bots or 100 bots or 1,000 bots. So the point is, the chain is continuously getting spammed, and there's like data on chain to prove it. And it's all happening because the blocks are pretty much free. So you're, as a bot or as a value extractor, you have an incentive to spam the chain as hard as you can to make money, because you have to fight off other bots too. So they all gang up on each other, trying to basically run sandwich attacks or MEV or whatnot. And so what we're doing with X1, we're solving this problem by basically saying fees are required. So like, if you really want to get into a token, are you willing to pay $1 or $2 to get into a token that's like going to make you $1 million? Probably. But if you're a bot and you're sending 1 million transactions that are priced $1 each or 50 cents each or even 10 cents each, you will immediately be priced out of this sort of bad behavior, which isn't happening on Solana today. And so we're solving that with what we call dynamic base fees that will likely raise the average cost per transaction per user, but keep the bots off the chain because they're going to be priced out of their shenanigans and trying to do MEV and extract money, which actually improves the quality of the chain, because with an absence of spam, not only the validators now are cheaper, you can afford to run maybe 3 validators where before you could only afford to run 1. Maybe you can afford to run 10 validators. And the chain actually scales technologically just with this game theory modification. And that's, again, what we have currently running on the X1 blockchain.
Makes sense. It's quite interesting, because I do believe that a lot of things that happen on Sol, as you mentioned, the reason for them is the fact that bots can just spam the whole chain and do the things that they want. But if they would have to pay for the blocks in this way, yeah, it would be definitely quite interesting. I also wanted to talk about, as you essentially forked SVM, you have a pretty easy access, as far as I can understand, in terms of just bridging most of the dApps, most of the things that are present on Solana to X1 in a very, very seamless way. And I was curious, before we would come to the talk of how it actually be planning to take over the market share, and will you be copying the product market fit of Solana from this cycle at least? I just wanted to ask this short question because you tapped into the situation with the coin of the first lady in the US. What do you think personally in terms of all of the situation that happened recently with the Argentina coin and all these coins on Sol? Like, do you think the chain is the one who is responsible, or maybe things could have been done differently?
I have very strong libertarian views on the chain and decentralization tech and personal responsibility. So I don't think the chain or any platform that's basically decentralized is supposed to tell you what you should be doing, censor, or do anything that can like violate this sort of like man in the middle. Like we do not want anybody to tell us what to do. At the same time, the dApp designers should provide enough feedback to the public to actually so that the public that's trying to trade and basically they're playing this game who can snipe fastest and who can dump fastest. I'm not like against sniping and dumping as a game. I am, however, against a manipulation of perception where, like, for example, with Argentina, a president of a country tweets and people perceive value in his tweet. And dexes like Jupiter and Meteora, they rush the validation of a token, basically saying it's completely normal and safe to get into it. It's been checked and vetted. And so people pump it to the moon, and then they lose all of their money. Like within hours, the president removes the tweet and says, "I have nothing to do with it." And then people ask him, "Well, you promoted it," and he said, "No, I didn't promote it. I shared it." So, and the guy behind the launch, Hayden, like that, like his group, he said, "We haven't swapped or we haven't sold. We just swapped." Which is like a bunch of bullshit, right? So like the point is like every celebrity or every attention token or coin that has been launched have dumped hard and there were insiders. And the regular people out there who are trying to play this game by gambling, which is again, I'm not against gambling. I think everybody should be able to do whatever the hell they want with their money, even if it's like send it to the burn address. However, I am against an active misrepresentation or what things are on chain. And those actors that are actively misrepresenting, they're scammers, they should be held accountable. But when it comes to the blockchain tech, I think the blockchain tech is just a platform. But I think people deserve to know what they're getting into. And also, I believe there's lack of education in people's minds, especially when it comes to like pump.fun coins. And again, I'm not against pump.fun. I think like I really don't care if there's a coin that's produced every second. So that in itself is not a problem. The problem is that when there's insider trading, there's a president who like has no idea what he's getting into, first tweets and then deletes a tweet. And under the influence of the forces that he doesn't even understand. And my point is like my message to him would be like, dude, if you don't understand what you're getting into, don't get into it. So like ignorance is no longer an excuse. And this sort of situation damages the overall perception of blockchains and blockchain tech as this like shady technology that is designed with the idea of maximum money extraction from an average Joe. So this is what I think we as a community should be actively be fighting.
Makes sense. Because I was also thinking like maybe Solana team, they could have done something, they could have done something better, but like any action is kind of at the edge of censorship. And if you would do it, you would have to censor everything. And yeah, it's just the whole different role. And probably this is not something they would want to do on the platform as well. So yeah, it's definitely the tough situation in terms of, I kind of agree that one of the issues is just the issue of education, and people just should be responsible for the things that they're doing with their own money as well. Coming to the next thing. So the main product market fit of Solana this cycle thus far, which I think you would agree with me on, is meme coins and the ability to trade these type of assets at this stage. Obviously, currently, we're not seeing them doing very, very well, but it does not say that they won't be coming back into the future. And you probably, as a new chain, you have this issue to take over the certain portion of the market share. Would you be planning to copy this product market fit of Solana, or you maybe have some other plans?
To be completely honest with you, I don't need to copy anything, because the market has already voted for what's like the most interesting thing that people are doing on chain. And those things are digital asset creation and digital asset trading. And the rest is just various ways that can be done. You can do it with Phantom Wallet, you can do it with Telegram, you can run a little bot that can copy trades from the wallets that you believe are excellent at finding gems, like those tokens that go up in price. So there's nothing that I need to copy because the market itself will come to a platform that supports the ability to create those type of tools. But expanding on it more, again, I will reiterate that Solana has battle-tested dApps, and they're the best in the world. It's very easy for anyone to go into a Solana-compatible chain, which is X1, and actually, without spending much effort, to launch your protocol that's been thoroughly tested on Solana. For example, Radium, Jupiter, Orca, we're running the same SVM virtual machine. They can deploy easily. My job is to provide access to the platform that's designed fairly, does not crash, runs relatively fast, or at least as fast as Solana, or maybe faster in some cases, because I think we might be faster because we're not going to be having spam. So that spam that's hitting Solana today is not going to be an issue with X1. Even if builders or developers bring their applications to the chain, it actually does not mean yet that the chain is successful at all. The game theory here runs much deeper, and the things that I'm focusing on are really just like very, very basic things. Number one, I want any validator to afford equipment online, join the network, and provide useful work towards the better and better metrics of decentralization. Like we want the Nakamoto coefficient to be above 300, which is actually doable with the proper protocol design. And lowering this barrier is one of the ways for people to make money on chain, because first you come in, you don't have to pay a lot. I think we estimate that the cost of our nodes is like $5 a day. So you get into a network, and then the network fairly chooses your leader or your validator to become a leader and to produce blocks. And we're not just going to be looking at the stake of delegation to your node or your self stake. We're going to be looking at various other parameters like how often do you go down? What is your performance in terms of how quickly can you make blocks? Various other things like how many delegators you have, not necessarily how much money people delegated to you, but are you actually quite popular among the cohort of users that are willing to give you some money? And so because it's kind of like a vote of confidence from the network. And then the other thing that we're doing, we're adding this concept or this function called VRF, which translates to verifiable random function. And the way that it works, and by the way, this has been borrowed heavily from Cardano. So Cardano has this protocol called Ouroboros, and they run VRF where they are attempting to choose the block producers more fairly rather than just from the amount of stake. So this sort of like a top-heavy stake design that Solana has been forced into. Now they have like 100 nodes that control the whole network. We are solving with randomization and attributes of nodes, which is not limited to stake of the tokens within your node. Which again makes you, as the person who want to join the project and provide decentralization, you will actually end up having more of a chance to make money on fees because you will be chosen as leader much more often among the set of nodes, like than for example in Solana. And again, I'm going to say that 75% of the time, the nodes from like the top 100 institutions that run on Solana will be chosen, but no one else will be chosen as much. So like this 25% is spread across like thousands of nodes where the top 100 nodes get everything or most of everything. They get 75%. And so we're looking at the game theory design and economic design to be adjusted to deal with this sort of concentration of wealth that further centralizes the chain. And it's not even about just centralization. And obviously, like Nakamoto coefficient is extremely important. But we just want people to have an ability to provide useful work and be compensated for it, rather than like only whales get paid. And they get even bigger whale tail, like so to speak, if they just continuously corner the market or monopolize the market. So that's the game theory and economic design behind X1. That's what I'm like really, really passionate about. And I think if we can make money fairly for the validators and mass on this planet, we probably will have the largest network. Just because the barrier will be the lowest and the ability to make money will be the fairest. Which actually should be attractive for people to start building, because there is even stronger censorship resistant guarantees that people get from the dApps and from like pretty much the whole infrastructure. That's kind of like my mandate when it comes to my function within the project. So like
Makes
it's not
sense.
necessarily like copying things and trying to like cherry pick and stuff like that. But then of course, like I will have to say that as we launch, our foundation will attempt to give people basically grants that will help those new builders or maybe OG builders to get into the chain and actually have some sort of compensation, with the thinking that should they bring people in or should they develop an amazing product, then the tokens that they hold from the grant actually will go up in value and everybody's happy.
I also had this question in terms of essentially using enablement of meme season on chain as a marketing tool, as essentially following the things that have happened in different chains since the end of 2023. Probably, firstly, we have seen this with Solana, Bonk, and Weave. Sol Foundation, according to certain things that were shared, was buying into these tokens. Then we had Avex Foundation investing into memes on chain. Then we had like a base season with the team of base supporting the whole thing. Then we had Justin Sun in August trying to copy Pump Fun and kind of create certain meme season to establish activity on chain. And I think one of the most recent cases is CZ with BNB chain trying to attract like as much traders as he can at this stage. So I do get your thing, and I think this is the thing that you probably have to be focusing on as the founder of the chain, to attract builders and dApps to come to chain. I was just curious whether or not do you have plans on using this part that I just mentioned as a marketing tool to pretty much bring people in to, I would say, to kind of help to ignite this run with the creation of digital assets and the trading of digital assets on chain as well.
Yeah, so the creation of digital assets on chain is my 100% number one priority when it comes to the chain usefulness. And yes, we're talking about the meme season, but it doesn't need to be a meme season when it comes to the digital asset creation. It could be NFT season, it could be RWA season, or it could be whatever else is there. We want to provide the best platform for token creation. And of course, that means that if we were to like somehow invite Pump.fun guys to join the network, we'll certainly be very receptive and would provide any sort of technical assistance or infrastructure support to make the token creation, token factory, so to speak, run as smoothly as possible. And at the same time, like the other side of the coin is swaps. So you have to provide very good support for the DEXs that can be integrated with, obviously, like we know that Pump.fun, like they have this $100,000 King of the Hill, whatever race, where they have this like private pool that eventually is released and ownership is renounced on the Radium. So you have to have a number of ingredients. You have to have an excellent wallet, a DEX, and a token creation tool. So, and everything else can just be built around it when it comes to metrics, introspection into the like rating, what kind of token is it? Is it like held by insiders? Does it have unlimited minting? Has ownership been renounced? That's those sort of things. So if I were to be asked like what's like the most important thing for me, I would say that definitely transparency, ease of use, and even lower barrier to all of those functions that I just described, which is wallet, DEX, and the token factory. I think those are the primary drivers of the chain's activity for very good reasons. People are attracted to make money quickly. And I'm not going to judge that you should be like delaying gratification and not gamble. Like I'm not anybody's mom. Like I really don't care what you do as long as you do something and you get educated. So certainly I'm again like I want to mention that I am pro transparent approach to it, that I think there are ways to make launches fair. And I think like this like sort of like a ordinal season that we saw on Bitcoin last year was a part of the movement towards fair launches, where basically you just go into the minting process, and the difficulty of minting is the proof of work on Bitcoin. But it worked really well because it was very difficult to snipe the supply because you just couldn't fit all of your transactions in a block. And so the block creation process, which is like 10 minutes more or less on Bitcoin, was acting as the sort of like a throttle and the governor of fairness, if you will, because there's enough time to look at things and see like other things really transparent. And did somebody pre-mint all the tokens before I did? Like you have time to figure it out. In Solana, it's very hard to figure out because within a minute, like I don't know if you've seen this thing from Jupiter called Trenches. It shows you like every second there's like 5 tokens created, and you have to like snipe them to be able to make any money on them. And again, like I'm not gonna judge whether it's like whether it's investment, whether it's gambling, whether it's trading. Like I really don't care. I just want the system to work, and I want people to be informed how it works so that they can make their own decisions.
I do remember the Ordinals season on BTC ecosystem. I think one of the issues is that the swap mechanism that was present, that you pretty much always had to find the buyer because of the absence of liquidity pools. And yeah, that's definitely left some people hanging with their coins, including me, unfortunately.
I am also in a similar boat here. I mean, what helped there, if we're like spend a minute on that topic, that the ordinal season of Bitcoin actually gave rise to extension wallets on the browser, where before Bitcoin was pretty much like useless in a way of like you had to really be like you could run Bitcoin Core or maybe Sparrow wallet, but those things are very complicated for people to figure out. So, and I think in terms of like technological advancement, it actually like Unisat wallet I think is excellent, and it's really cool with what you can do. But certainly like Bitcoin is a dinosaur, like compared to Solana, like we're not even the same universe when it comes to speed and UX. So
that's all of my questions that I had. Do you have any final words to share?
oh, those are always difficult. I mean, I'm excited for the next year and years to come. I think there's so much information out there in terms of what works and what isn't, and I think this sort of like a washout in Solana can be healthy for the ecosystem in general overall, because everybody's learning what is it that creates value and what isn't. I would say the meme coins themselves, they have this like very interesting way to build communities. So like it's kind of like you're getting into a club and you're getting into, like you get this like, for example, Bobo. Bobo is the bear on Ethereum, and you like the bear. You just like it, right? And you talk to other people who like the bear, and you hold the token too. So you're like part of the club. It's a good feeling, right? So it's very different than like pump that fun lunch every second snipe pump dump. Different aspect. And so meme coins in that case actually can really act as relatively easy to understand onboarding tools for people in general, and especially for young people, because they're attracted to the sort of like social structure, club creation, and being part of it. And I think we definitely should not disregard that. And like it's so funny to me, like Ethereum maxis, they're screaming that all of the memes are toxic, right? And they're saying Ethereum is DeFi. But let me ask you, how can you have DeFi without swaps? Like DeFi is literally like the only way to make yield from your like liquidity pool is to have a liquidity pool that actually has some sort of a swap going, right? And majority of tokens that have the most swap volume are those meme coins or those like celeb coins, and you can actually then capture the fees using DeFi protocols to create value for people who like support the pools and stuff like that. So to me, it's like very nonsensical what they're saying. Like Ethereum is for DeFi and Solana is for meme coins. It doesn't make any sense. I actually think that Solana's DeFi application layer is miles ahead of Ethereum, miles in UX and what you could be doing. So I mean, like, and I understand that like you hold Ethereum, it's been $2,600 in 2021. It's been $2,600 in 2022, 2023, 2024, and now 2025. It's still $2,600. It hasn't really moved, right? And if you bought the top, well, you're kind of like screwed with your bag, and there's like really doesn't appear to be an upside for Ethereum because there isn't a roadmap from the Ethereum Foundation how to scale the chain, and the market has voted for Solana in a way of like wanting a more buoyant, more interesting ecosystem that actually can provide better user experience. And Ethereum is just not that. And so Ethereum guys are like really, really suffering right now. And like this situation with Argentina, they're like, aha, finally we're validated in telling everyone that Solana is a scam chain. Actually, they called Solana Scam Lana, right? So it's CrimeFi and Scam Lana, right? And it's so ridiculous to me. But hey, I mean, like I just enjoy watching them fight. Like let them fight. I really enjoy like watching X and seeing what's going on in people's minds. So
Yeah.
it's very entertaining.
Yeah. Some people also call it Solana. I know Bobo very well. Bobo Billions, yeah. And I do think that like the difference there is that there are meme coins and there are attention coins. And for some reason currently attention coins they've been going to almost zero along with meme coins, but I do believe that the market at a certain point of time will realize this distinction, and meme coins they will essentially start to move separately out there. This is pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time, Jack. And yeah, I do believe that the launch of X1 is somewhere in the Q1 of this year.
Probably end of Q1, maybe early Q2.
Right.
We're just aligning there's a lot of things that need to be done properly. Like when you have the TGE, right? How do you hold the tokens? Should it be in my wallet, somebody else's wallet? Should it be in third party's wallet? Should there be multi-sig? Maybe it should be in some sort of like a custodian, like special custodian that has like certain special rules, right? So we're currently focusing on safety and kind of like the infrastructure when it comes to the foundation setup. So we're trying to set up the foundation that can scale our kind of like vision properly and apply the principles that can have longevity behind them, because we don't want to launch something that's just going to end up like burning and dying just because we messed up the way that the tokens are either distributed, so on and so forth. So yeah, so it's like takes a little bit of time to get that done properly, and the amount of like professionals that I have to interact with, like after this call I have to talk to like the crypto tax guy, who is probably going to be very expensive. And why is it important? Well, it's important because like I have a friend who launched the project, and I forget if it was like a blockchain or a DeFi protocol, and he messed up in the way how the tokens were minted, and the IRS immediately came after him saying you owe us 20 million because your fair market value of a project was 40 million at the time of launch, and you haven't done this one little paper, and now you owe us 20 million, but the tokens are not even liquid and they're not traded anywhere. And yet he has the tax liability of 20 million. So what he had to do is basically kill the project. That project filed bankruptcy and there's no more project, right? And all of this is because he did not make the right moves in a way of like how to set up the whole thing properly. And so like those are the things that I'm like working on 24/7 to make sure that we don't fuck shit up during launch.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.